All right, so now we're live. This is Cody Sanchez's most popular video. It has 1.2 million, no, sorry, 5 million views. She has 1.21 million subscribers. Anyways, you guys really liked the last reaction I did to her. This one's actually really interesting. I'm interested to say what data she refers to in this, but it's the 6 businesses that never fail according to data. And as you guys may well know, especially if you're following my channel, and if you're just an entrepreneur in general, you just know 80% of small businesses are going to fail within the first 5 years of starting. And some of those numbers are way worse if you look at different categories. If you're looking at restaurants or, for example, startups in Silicon Valley, they have way higher failure rates. If you want to start a business that isn't going to fail, you usually want to copy a model that's already proven and build your own brand around it. I do believe this is what Cody's going to say. I've never seen this video before, so you're getting my first-hand account, first-hand reaction to what is actually going to go on in this video. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's just jump right into it.
Fail. The question is, how can you have a business that doesn't fail? We found 6 businesses with the lowest failure rate associated with them. This is all backed by data, because I think it's valid to be worried about having a business that fails. I mean, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which sounds...
All right, we're off to a good start. We're actually talking about people who do real stats for their job, which is very important. Anytime people say case studies or statistics or data, I get red flags up immediately, because unless they have someone on their team that studies stats or data science or has a really good fundamental understanding of statistics, I start to question a lot of the things that are being said.
Sounds really fancy and official. 20% of U.S. small businesses fail within the first year. Then that jumps up to like 50% by the year 5, and after 10...
Interesting, because it used to be closer to 80%. I do believe that is the number quoted in the E-Myth. However, yeah, and they're quoting year 10 at 66%. These numbers could be updated. I could also just be wrong on my numbers. I have a lot of numbers in my brain.
10 years, 2/3 of all businesses have gone under. That's not good odds, not great odds at all. So if we actually look at the data to figure out which ones have the highest...
Here's the other thing. Here's like the crazy thing. If you're young and you want to start a business, the odds are actually on your side. Because if you multiply essentially like a 50% or 60% success rate over the first 5 years, or even if it's 80% mercy, you could do that 3 times. And you're definitely going to have a business that is successful by the time you're, 30, 35. And that's the crazy thing, is when you're young, time is on your side. As you get older, things become riskier and riskier.
Likelihood to succeed, then you can determine if you want to jump into those pools. I always talk about the most important decision you make is the first deal you do or the first business you start. Because if the first one fails, your likelihood of taking the risk again is incredibly diminished. This is called your recency bias. So if your...
That is true.
Recency bias is winning, that's why we want small wins, then you are more likely to go win again or take more risk. If your recency bias is losing or things that feel bad, you're less likely to continue.
Yeah, so I mean, the one thing I will add is, even if you want to be an entrepreneur and you're willing to accept failure, you can essentially do what I said. However, what Cody, is saying here with recency bias, at the end of the day, we all like to think we're different. We all like to think that we're better, but statistics are statistics for a reason. The vast majority of people will make certain decisions. So if you're, if the recency bias to you is failure, and you've never succeeded in anything, and you just failed your last business, you're more likely to succumb and go get a 9-to-5 job where that income is consistent. The reason why I am bullish on being younger and willing to take on more risk, if you are younger, is just simply, again, it goes back to just having time on your side, and you also have less liabilities. You have less dependence. You don't have a mortgage, most likely. You're not married. You probably don't have kids. And so your tolerance for being able to sustain risk is a lot higher. Worst case scenario, your business fails, you're going to go back and live with mom and dad. So your worst case scenario for most people, and again, some people don't have mom and dad to go back and live with, but for most people, it's just not quite there. However, if you can succeed the first time, why not, right?
Continue to take risk. So let's get to the data and see which businesses have the lowest "this is going to bankrupt me" potential. I got 6 right here.
1, 2, here comes the 5, 6 disaster flu like Victoria Falls bad sins.
All right, number 1, probably won't surprise my contrarian friends, laundromats. Oh, laundromats. An amazingly low failure rate. According to Laundrylux, laundromats have about a 94.8% success rate over a 5-year period. I also confirmed these numbers because Laundrylux is a member of the laundromat community, so maybe they're a little biased. And
I appreciate her throwing that out there. And we're going to see what she says. 95% is so high to me. And the crazy thing, and I don't doubt this about laundromats at all, but it's just crazy to me that in 2024, laundromats, and I guess this video was filmed a year ago, so it's like 2023, but still, tomatoes. It's crazy that so many people still go to use laundromats. But let's be real, like, if you're in temporary housing, if you're moving for your job, and this is terrible, but like if you're underprivileged, under income, if you're living in a trailer park, you might not be able to afford a washer and dryer. It's crazy to me that's the reality, but a lot of people, this is the reality. And the thing about washing your clothes is at a certain point you might go a week without washing your jeans because you can get away with it, but at a certain point you start to notice it. And it's just crazy. It's one of those things that you would think is kind of a want, but is more of a necessity. I mean, there's the whole hygiene side to it, obviously. But it's kind of crazy that we have put so much emphasis on being able to have a laundry machine, like a washer or a dryer. Most people, if you go back 100 years, did not have that, and would wash clothes by hand in their home. But now people are willing to pay for the convenience of a machine, even if they have to dry it there, in order to not wash clothes by hand if they're unable to afford a washer and dryer set. It's just one of these things, like when you think through it, of like, the evolution of what humans are like willing to pay for versus not willing to pay for is, it's a little mind-boggling.
The Chamber of Commerce did a study in partnership with Speed Queen where they show that they have about a 93% success rate. So somewhere in the 90s, let's call it. Again, nothing's guaranteed in business, but that's one of the reasons I talk about these laundromats like my gateway drug to business buy-in. They have a low failure rate. They're simple to understand. Quarters, machines, a little bit of a dryer, a little bit of a washer. They typically don't take millions to start or buy. And it also turns out people need to wash their clothes, even during recessions, so you have downside protection. Lastly, there's a passive component. If you do laundromats as an absentee business, you can run it remote or with very few employees or contractors. Your employees end up being your machines. So we've got a whole video on the nitty-gritty of laundromats for you, how we run them, how I started my first laundromat that I bought for $100,000 and made $67,000 on, and even how to make a laundromat be worth $3 million. That's number one, laundromats.
To be free and flexible and creative was really essential to what I wanted to make, and I didn't find a platform that did that.
Number two, rental property businesses.
Real estate. This is going to be interesting.
I think it was Andrew Carnegie that said 90% of all millionaires become so through owning real estate. More money's been made in real estate than almost all industrial investments can.
Sorry, I got this warning heads up of I think it's the sound Cody Sanchez uses on these videos. Gonna have to look into that. It does not like it when I'm streaming. It has no problems with it once the video is posted. And again, because I'm adding commentary, it shouldn't be a problem, but
combined. So maybe it makes sense that they have an 85.3% success rate. Why is real estate interesting, and why does it have a low failure rate? Well, one is because, again, it's a simple business with hard assets. So, you have your house. The market is really efficient. So typically your house is worth what the market says that it is. There's not a lot of room for variance there or change. You typically have monthly cash flow in the form of rental income. It's pretty easy to model because up front I have to pay X in mortgage and I have to pay Y from my renter, and here's the delta or the difference between the two. Also, interesting parts about real estate are obviously things like appreciation baked in, 4% a year on average, or my favorite word, leverage. This is the form of mortgages, right? So you have the ability to use somebody else's money in order to buy real estate. And then that also allows you to have tax benefits like 1031 exchanges where you sell to defer capital gains, depreciation and amortization, which basically...
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing. We'll see if she brings this up, but if you're actually a business owner or if you have a spouse that's fully involved in real estate, there's a lot of things where you can do where you can accelerate the depreciation. And if you have a significant other that is full-time in real estate, you can have unlimited offsets against your active income. It's a little tricky as far as the real estate and tax side of it goes to actually like make that happen, but it's really possible. Again, this is why you have so many millionaires from real estate. I do believe real estate has made more millionaires than any other industry. Now, the thing I don't like about that specific statement is you look at a lot of these homes, especially today, and it's like, okay, you wait 30 years, and even if you rewind, let's say 20 years or 30 years, and you look at like the upper end houses in America, and if you had a fully paid off house and you're in your late 50s, plus you had a 401k, half your money's tied up in your house. It's $400,000 or $500,000 in a nicer neighborhood because let's be realistic, we're talking about millionaires. So like the upper percentage or the upper echelons of like the upper middle class. And then also the fact that, they might have a 401k or a Roth IRA or IRA that they have put money into over the time. So, millionaire, and you could argue that real estate has made that, or they maybe had that house and a rental property or something like that. It's not, and there has been a lot of multi-millionaires made from real estate, not talking that at all. I just don't always love that statement that real estate has made more millionaires. Because I feel like there's some nuances to it.
Basically are a different way for you to take write-offs on your taxes overall. There's also great tax benefits to being a real estate investor only. And then there's the passive component in that you could just hire a property manager. There's no such thing as free money with no work, but real estate prices are interesting if you're in the right cycle of the market. Now, right now, I think real estate's priced pretty high, but falling fast. I'm in California today. Real estate prices are down like 20 to 30% here. And you need to think about, can I qualify for a loan? Can I cover the mortgage? But this success rate is probably there for all the reasons that we talked about. Even if you're making a small percentage monthly, it's like the average rental property nets about $462 a month. So it's not going to make you a billionaire, but you probably can understand how to grow the business, how not to grow the business, and what a good deal looks like with a little bit of work. Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better. All right, number 3. Self-storage facility. If you don't like the idea of real estate investing for multifamily, let's say, and you don't want to deal with tenants or trash and toilets, self-storage have less of those things. They have been one of the leading asset classes in real estate since 2008, and according to a few studies, one by Rhino Building, these resilient businesses have like a 92% success rate. One caveat here I would say, though, is there are a lot of these...
Great guy to follow. He actually posts, in my opinion, some pretty funny content. I think his username, it's Nick Huberman, but I think his username on like Twitter is Sweaty Startup. And he is exactly doing this. He is doing self-storage units. I do believe he primarily buys in the South. So like Missouri, Louisiana, up through, I do believe, Kentucky. I could be mistaken. I can't remember his exact buy box. But, and I have friends that have bought these. They were buying them up in Idaho Falls. And it was really interesting because once you fill them, you rarely have turnover. You rarely have people not pay their bill because a lot of times with these, they don't accept credit card. They only do ACH. And people are willing to do that because there's not a lot of vacancy in storage units out there. There's just not a lot. So, and depending on where you live, of course. But it's just really... It's a really interesting sub-niche of the real estate market where you can really slay it, where you have tenants, but you don't have the toilets, right? You don't have the plumbing, you don't have the electrical, you don't have all of these other issues or things you have to maintain.
These self-storage facilities. So will that 92% rate continue? I'd want to watch what's going to happen the next couple months and years, but I have plenty of friends like this guy, Nick Huber, who makes millions.
Hey!
On absentee storage sites he lives hours away from. Here's a whole article we did on how to start and run an unmanned self-storage business. And, what's fascinating about this asset class is advances in technology make this not only possible, but pretty standard to run these things remote. So basically you have keyless entry, you have tracking systems, you have security systems, you have automated bill pay, you have all automated contracts. All of this allows people to get in and out of their units without you. Then there's the value add component, aka adding things to the business to make it more valuable and efficient. They're high with this type of asset class. It doesn't take a ton to make self-storage pretty interesting. In fact, look at what you can do if you just paint the front of your self-storage unit and what the normal increase in the property value is for that. So the phone.
Now that's wild as far as value adds go. Wild.
Has allowed us to have no manager on site needed in most ways.
We made USAA for homeowners who like being ready. That's why we have safety tips for things like fires, home security, and USAA insurance just in case. USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
The town tends to grow around them, and what my buddies had done who bought the storage units did exactly that.
Yeah, you better. Number 4, transportation businesses. Last mile delivery. I think last mile delivery is the biggest change in our economy in the last 10 years when it comes to transportation and logistics. With e-commerce coming along, the gig economy, online platforms, it's more needed than ever to have a way to get the goods into our greedy little mitts and porches. Basically, trucking that delivers goods or people from one place to another for a fee is transportation and logistics. We have a whole article on here on how one gent turned this idea of a short distance trucking company into $2,200 a day. It's really good. But this can come in many forms, from like a full-fledged long-haul trucking business to a simple little side hustle driving for Uber on the weekends or everything in between. These businesses have a success rate about 76.4%.
Now, the crazy thing, we'll see what she says, but with the advent of things like Amazon Prime, 2-day shipping, Shopify, just the rise of e-commerce over the last 5 to 10 years has been insane. The markets really can't keep up with it. But with that being said, at the same time, the price of trucks has gone up quite exponentially, while the price that you pay workers to drive them has gone down, which in some ways can be, quote unquote, good for the business owner, but it's also really difficult because it's like, okay, how are you going to find really good labor to be able to do this that's willing to work at those wages? And at the same time, like, the equipment just gets more and more expensive. This is, not saying here that you can't do this or that you can't go and find good deals at auctions and whatnot, but it just becomes difficult. The other thing is, funny enough, and like, I grew up on a farm. My dad has a semi, 95 Kenworth. And the really interesting thing is California right now is looking at passing a law that is essentially, they have a lot of emission laws in California. And what's happening is it is becoming harder and harder if you have any older trucks to be able to do transportation into or out of California. Now, I know California is one state, but the thing is California sets the precedent in which most states follow down the road in the next 5 to 10 years. So there could be an arbitrage area where you could get trucks that are no longer legally allowed to drive on the roads in California and utilize those. And I do believe they're actually looking at putting forward, I know they're doing this for trains right now. They're really pushing to make all trains fully electric without diesel engines. And you have Caterpillar and what's the other company? They're really scrambling to try and win the contracts and the bids because most of those trains aren't going to be allowed in California. I think California has half the trains because they have the Los Angeles ports and the San Diego ports that account, and also the Bay Area. They basically account for most of our trade coming from China because, let's be real, Portland doesn't have a lot, and Oregon never did anything to develop any of the other ports like Reedsport or Coos Bay. And not that those are bigger, but they could have been developed more. And Seattle is big, but it is further north, and it just makes a lot more sense to ship those into California where there's bigger population centers and better railways to then get those goods and services out to places like Texas, Colorado, where those populations are higher, right? And over to the East Coast as well, versus, through Washington. Because once you get out of California, like, there's a lot the rails are just easier to transport. You can look into it if you want to. This is just from my experience and from what I know, and I could be a little wrong. I just know the majority of freight, not even freight, the majority of goods that are being shipped from like China and Asia, so like Indonesia, Taiwan, all of it all pretty much goes into California right now, the vast majority.
According to Advisor Smith. That's kind of fascinating because I thought these businesses would be more complex. Now, there is a massive difference between short and long haul trucking or shipping food from Uber and long haul trucking. So your results are going to vary. But on average, these businesses have a high success rate, I think, because again, we don't have that many inputs. I'd worry about scale, given the demand for drivers if you wanted to really create a huge empire. But as a job turned into a business,
yeah, that's what I was saying is like the demand for drivers, it's really difficult because wages go lower and lower. And some of the margins, like the success rate's really high, but trucking in certain instances is kind of like farming where you need a certain level of scale for a lot of these things to start to pencil out.
This one could be interesting and relatively low risk. You could buy a truck that's going to have an inherent value in it, a little bit of depreciation after you buy it, maybe if you buy it new. And it's your time to start with actually running the routes or having somebody else, but you don't have a lot of what's called CapEx or upfront expenses in order to run this business. And so not only does it have a relatively low failure rate, but I always am looking for how can I make sure a deal can never bankrupt me? I don't ever want to do a deal where if this one deal goes sideways, especially in the beginning, I could wipe out the past 20 years of me investing and working, and neither do you. And that's why I like these little gateway starter businesses.
Story time.
The one thing I will say about trucking companies, it's one of those things super easy to sell once you have it built.
All right, guys, this is kind of special because I just sold a website for $8K that I bought for about $100.
If she's going to talk about URLs, I kind of hate the idea of domain like flipping, but let's see. I'm really interested to see what she says here. I just, not that you can't make money domain flipping, but it's just something that gripes me. But let's see what she says.
It was called Grow Getters, a newsletter that talked about marketing growth. I did it just for fun.
Now, okay, interesting. Selling a website, but really it's a newsletter. So she's selling a subscriber list for marketing purposes.
On with two friends, and it made me realize that I wanted to tell more people that you could start with small deals, you could start with large deals, but you can definitely start with online deals. So I partnered with this company, Flippa, thanks guys, about where to buy online businesses. It's my favorite site to buy any sort of online business, period, full stop. That's why I'm trying to invest in them. So maybe you guys can check this out so that I could get part of this series. That'd be awesome. Thanks, Blake, CEO. Because after all, we know that 94% of startups fail. That's why I like to buy them instead of build them. And this is true on Flippa too for online businesses. You can get loans or use seller financing.
I do believe there's a really good book. I might butcher the name. I do believe it's Buy Then Build. But the whole principle of it is like, oh no, you actually shouldn't start a business because starting a business is very difficult. Like she has basically hammered home the whole video is that the failure rate is extremely high. So the idea of buying an existing business and then growing it is going to lead to you making a lot more money when you do in fact sell it. And it's going to be a lot easier because the economics of the business are already proven. There's already a customer base, so on and so forth.
Although you got to put down some cash, you can have profits on day one of owning the business. You can use the cash flow of the business to fund your next brilliant idea. But instead of paying for an idea, you buy it first. So here's the link. Go check them out. There's 500,000 businesses that have been listed on Flippa. They've done billions of dollars in transactions.
Cody, you're forgetting that Flippa is also the best place to sell, to buy. Check out Flippa.
Honestly, I'm just here for the AT&T business internet.
I hate ads.
It's super fast. I downloaded
But,
8 true
yeah,
crime
flippers are
shows during our last
and
video
it's
call.
relevant and
Look at my
because
eyeballs.
eventually if you're an
I've been binging for like
entrepreneur,
3 straight days.
they make
I know you don't want to see Donald Trump
of
retake
their
the White
money
House.
when they
I know you don't want
So
a
if
nationwide
you are
ban on
to,
abortion.
in fact,
I know you don't
sell it,
want
that's what
major
you're gonna
cuts to Social Security.
And Flip is a great platform to do that on. Not that I've ever used it. There's also it's like businesses for sale, or it's like BIZ. I forgot, but it's another big one where you can buy and sell businesses on it. That's a business broker. But like all of these sites are just great ways where you can either find deals or sell your current venture.
Speaking of maybe my favorite intro starter business, vending machine routes. So you don't need a lot of cash. 3 to 5K, you buy a vending machine and get started, or you're super smart and industrious and you buy a used one for $800 like this. You know, I've talked ad nauseum, aka a lot, about this. And I have friends who have vending machines that vend healthy food, have, you know, normal vending machines.
Ooh, is this name dropping? I guess it might be, but all this to say that Candace Nelson has become an internet bud of mine lately, and she is the founder of Sprinkles Cupcakes. She created Sprinkles Cupcakes vending machines. Brilliant.
I think there's going to be more and more. It's interesting that she brought up like this really fancy vending machine, and you might have noticed this as you just go about your life, but there are more and more businesses that, or more and more vending machines that are, you know, fancier, where they, you know, will make a pizza for you, or they have this extremely fresh food, or all of these different things where the technology behind the vending machine becomes more and more advanced, where it can do more and more things just because of like the advances in robotics. And it's interesting to see those machines play out in real life, because again, it's like having a, you know, a cupcake factory, or a cupcake shop, not factory, but without any employees. So more expensive machine, obviously, but less overhead in the long run.
Idea. She definitely made more than a few grand on that thing. I don't want to make a big deal about this, but if you do not think that red velvet cupcakes from Sprinkles are the best cupcakes out there, like, I don't know if we can be friends. I think it's unavoidable.
Once you have your vending machine, a couple different things you need to do for it. Find a well-trafficked location, negotiate to put it in for, you know, as a service or for a rental fee, then fill inventory. Great little starter business. I wouldn't do it if I was a pro or wanted to make a lot of money, meaning if I wanted to make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, this business is probably really good for your first 20, 30, 50, maybe you could get to $100,000. But it's a great business to learn things like P&Ls, logistics, pricing, margins, managing a few contractors, or running it by yourself. You start small, it's not going to bankrupt you, you figure out how the business works, and then you...
If I was in high school again, this is what I would try to do. And of all the things I did in high school, yeah, this would have been an amazing side hustle compared to that, because when I graduated, it actually would have left me with a business that I could then sell for a profit.
Slowly expand, and this business has more than a 90% almost success rate. Then you could eventually have a bunch of them, roll them up and sell them as a group, like these companies do. So the actual success rate for a vending machine business varies from 90%, according to Drop Vending, who's in the space, or 82% success rate, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor.
So the one thing I'll say, and I trust the U.S. Bureau of Labor more, just because the people I've talked to, the people that freaking taught me statistics, they all worked for government laboratories or government institutions, and they were extremely nerdy and extremely specific when it came to statistics. And I feel like that would maybe transfer over to the Bureau of Label Statistics versus a private organization, and especially the ones that she's been listing. But like anytime that, again, and I'll throw this up again, anytime there is a stat that is being posted, such as a success rate, there's a lot of things that really matter that come into it, such as the sample size, where those were located. There's just a lot of different ways you can look at it. And also depending on what is a version of success. Are they still in business? Have they been operating as a loss? And they're a tax write-off for another guy's main real business? You know, there's all of these different factors that go into it, and a lot of information that you just don't know, especially when you just see the stat of, 92% success rate or 80% success rate. So again, just be wary of that.
There are a slew of billion-dollar vending companies, which is interesting also because it does show that you can scale this space, although I think it'd be a hard slog. So when you combine the low failure rate, affordable startup cost, and simple operations of this business, I really like this starter business for people who want to hustle.
Okay, number 6, senior care centers. So this one surprised me.
I didn't realize that senior care centers had such a low failure rate. But actually, it kind of makes sense for a lot of reasons. One, government subsidies, state subsidies, city subsidies that basically allow people to run senior care centers like this with some help from the government. Two is obviously the demographics in the US are changing. There's a lot of older people, less young people, and they need more care. Now, originally, when I thought of these ideas, I was like, what are some beginner ways to do this? You can't buy, I mean, this property right here costs tens of millions of dollars. You probably can't buy that when you're just starting out. But I didn't realize that there's a ton of little houses where they actually rent a house and get it zoned properly for senior care, or alternatively buy a house and get it zoned or the right certificates to be able to have assisted living there. So that's why this idea is actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's whole real estate groups for like senior care living, and it looks like this is the end of this video. This was a really good video though, and a lot of these businesses do have really high success rates. So my biggest piece of advice or biggest piece of takeaway when you're starting a business is look at small businesses that would be competitors, and also look, and this also depends on what your time horizon is, but like with the vending example machine, look at, are there any billion-dollar enterprises in this area? Also, it's giving me a stinking temporary block thing again. I don't even know why, because I'm literally just talking right now. There is no trademark music going on whatsoever, so wild. Don't know why that is. But yeah, make sure you look at what businesses are not just successful as their success rates, but look at what the competitors look like and what those profit margins are. Also look at what the biggest businesses in that same industry are for that, and see if there's any scalability to it. Like for example, like in the coaching space, we do like a coaching consulting business. Consulting, you have companies like McKinsey, but as far as like online business consultants, you haven't really had anyone that has broke out beyond like the 8 to like 9 figure range. There are no billion-dollar people who have cornered the market or even have a majority of the market. And I think part of that too is just because when you're doing online business consulting, it's hard to, because you have to go with the LLP or the limited liability partnership. I do believe it's an LLP eventually, because in order to entice the high quality people that you need to have that intelligence on demand, which is really what consulting is, you have to have a way where you pay them effectively, which is for them to have a stake in the business in the long run. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to attract that top talent, because they're going to go start their own businesses or work somewhere else where they have better stock option plans. And that's something like, for example, that McKinsey or Bain or even like the Big Four consultants that do a lot of consulting, they've done a really good job at doing that and offering that to their employees with having good bonuses and the opportunity to eventually become a partner in the business. The big drawback, and the reason why I don't think you see that in the online space yet, is because most of these people have made buku bucks. They've made $100 million and they've kept 50 of it. And now they're like, whatever, I'll go retire on my ranch in Montana. I'll go sit on a beach in Tahiti. Who cares, right? So with that being said, just, research your business, know what you're getting into, because if you don't, you're just going to get your butt kicked down the road. If you got any value from this whatsoever, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and it really helps me continue to do these videos and provide my knowledge that I've got from building a 7-figure business, as well to help you grow your business and pursue your dreams.